sounds like what would be most useful for you right now is discussing logical reasoning and just improving your overall accuracy. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. And you've got about 2 months till the June LSAT. They may push that back depending on how the COVID situation unfolds. But there's two things here. One is focusing on fundamentals. So necessary versus sufficient conditions, necessary assumption logical reasoning questions versus sufficient assumption questions. Then we have on the higher level, dissecting and analyzing the methods of reasoning, breaking them down during your review process, figuring out what tricks and traps LSAC used to increase the difficulty level of a question, like burying the conclusion in the middle of the stimulus, requiring you to take the contrapositive of a statement, linking together conditionals, using annoying words like unless. You've got to look at each of those discrete pieces and understand them individually. Only then can you handle them all mixed together in a more difficult question in the section.
Is it realistic for someone to study within the 2 months and get a score at least by 150?
It is. I mean, you've been doing this for a while. You're certainly, I know you're not new to it. It's been on and off for a while, right?
Right. Like, I don't feel like I'm like at the beginning stages, like, oh, what's a question stem? What's the paragraph? I know that stuff, but it's more like I'm trying to get deeper into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think given that you already have prior familiarity, you've got a bit of a foundation, it's certainly realistic. But I also think that's not the best question to ask. You're taking June either way. Maybe it'll be rescheduled as an LSAT flex, who knows? But you've got a goal in mind. You've got the time to devote to this right now. Let's just look at what you've got to do. And so I laid out a couple of different ways to think about logical reasoning, both the foundation portions and then the next level analysis. And both of those are really important. So when you're studying out of a textbook or watching a video, you might be focusing more on the basics. Then when you figure out which questions are giving you the most trouble, maybe you save a running list, maybe you've got a mistake journal or mistake log where you track all of them. Then when you're analyzing how you're reasoning through them during your review process, that's when you can really figure out which tricks and traps you're uniquely prone to falling for so that you can avoid making the same mistakes the next time around. And you may find that, for example, unless gives you trouble, unless, except, until, without. If that's a type of concept that gives you trouble, you might want to go back to basics to review that particular thing. And so as you figure out those unique traps that you fall for, you return to fundamentals, you understand that better. So next time you encounter a similar question, you won't make that same mistake again.
Okay.
How does all that strike you?
I never really thought of it like that, how you're putting it. Because a lot of people, especially when it comes to studying time, they're like, oh, you need to put at least 8 hours a day. I'm like, what? 8 hours a day? Like that's just unrealistic. And, I know, because like I said, I'm in the master's program and I met people who are also in this master's program trying to get into the law school, because that's the main purpose of this program that we're in. And most of them told me, well, I only been studying 3 to 4 times for, 3 to 4 hours a day, or like 4 to 5 days a week. And their scores increased. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm studying too hard. I don't like, I know it varies to different people, but when I first started the process, I had a professor and he told me he studied for the LSAT at least 8 to 10 hours a day. He didn't do any work. He was married. His wife did everything. He didn't do anything but LSAT. Because he's like, you got to live and breathe LSAT.
Yeah, I mean, 8 to 10 hours a day for most people is going to be too much. It's going to lead to burnout.
That's what I've been trying to, express to this person. Like, I'm experiencing burnout. I don't even study that much for my regular master's program, and I'm still getting the scores that, A's and B's versus what the LSAT is doing. And I'm putting more effort into this LSAT, and I'm not getting as much of the score I want than I'm doing for my own actual classes. And it's like, why is that possible?
It's not about what other people are doing. Focus on yourself, stay in your own lane on that. It doesn't matter what they do, if they're doing 10 hours a day or 1 hour a day and they got X result or Y result. Doesn't matter. Everyone has their own unique rhythm to this sort of thing. And maybe, there's that famous 10,000 hours rule to master something, right? You may have heard about that.
Right.
And whether those are compressed into 1 year or 20 years, you reach a certain point at which you understand it on a deep level regardless. How much pain you have along the way or how long it takes you is a totally different question. There's also a degree of personalization involved, both in terms of what works for you in general. Some people have the stamina to go 6 hours a day, no problem. Others might want to do 2 to 3 hours and take a break and then pick up the next day. Totally fine. There's also the other obligations you have going on in your life. And then obviously COVID throws everybody for a loop and changes up your daily routine. Right? So those are all things to consider. What's most important is that you create a plan for yourself that's sustainable, but also keeps you moving forward. And as you may know, study plans are something I've thought a lot about over the years. I've got week by week ones, day by day ones, even budgeting your time over the course of a day, especially during the COVID situation when people are quarantined at home. I would typically say a couple hours before lunch, couple hours after lunch, just to summarize it as cleanly as possible. That works for a lot of people. You got your master's program, some obligations there. Maybe you do a little bit less studying. Maybe you only do a study session after lunch and do your master's stuff before lunch. Totally fine, as long as you get there in the end.
Makes sense. I know this whole coronavirus has thrown everybody in the loop, because even before all of this, I would study 4 or 5 times a week, at least 5 hours. And, I don't know if you noticed that the Facebook group that I'm in, I did a practice test without the accommodations that I have, because I have 70 minutes on the actual LSAT. But, 'cause I was doing it on the computer and it only allows me the traditional 35 minutes. So I'm like, you know what? I got to try and do it, be faster. And, I was proud of myself because sure, I didn't get the score I would have liked, but I got the score that I had during the LSAT at that time that, the actual LSAT that I took, I got that same score, but I had less time. So that was like, okay, well, if I can do that without having the whole 70 minutes, imagine if I really, practice it, I can get that 150 no problem. At least that's how I feel. That kind of motivated me to do more. But COVID-19 really messed that up. And
Sure. Well, it's awesome that you did so well with the time constraint that you don't even have. I mean, double time could be a huge benefit for you. And so I would always suggest practicing like it's going to be on game day. I know that maybe the system you were using didn't allow adjustments, but the new official LSAT Prep Plus from LSAC with the exams in the digital format, they will allow you to adjust for accommodations. And so on that platform, at least, you could practice like it's game day with the 70 minutes. One thing to keep in mind, of course, is that for the 5-section LSAT, double time becomes a really long day, right? So
yeah,
you may want to think about that. If you can opt for the flex, depending on how things unfold, and you're only doing 3 sections with double time, that goes from 2 hours to 4 hours rather than 3+ to 7 or more. It becomes a really long day with the regular 5-section exam. So see if you could do the flex, that may ultimately benefit you a lot. But also it is really promising that you were able to do so well, even with a regular time constraint.
Now back to the logical reasoning. Because like I said, because I want to do it in June. I don't feel like I'll be ready by May, because not so much be ready. It's more of I don't live alone. I live with my family, and they can come bust through the door any minute, and that would like throw me completely off. Might as well forfeit right there, and then might as well be like, well, I can't do it. But that's why I'm trying to do it in June. I can go out. Hopefully this COVID-19 clears up and, things get back to semi-normal. But if I were to really focus on the logical reasoning, what should be the first topic that I should focus on?
Well, if you were starting from square one, I would say maybe start with inference questions because they're relatively simpler. You're not starting from square one though. So for you, I would say if you have identified particular weak areas like the necessary versus sufficient, for example, you want to focus on that. and you'll also uncover things along the way. You could, if you're not sure where to begin, just do a time section or two and see what gives you the most trouble, and then go back to basics on that.
And how long, like, okay, if I were to say, okay, I'm gonna do this subject for like a week, is that a good time frame, or just do how it really goes with the studying and how I pick up?
It's reasonable to have a section as your focus for the week. You might want to also cycle in the other. So if you want to focus on logical reasoning, still do a bit of games at least one day, do a little bit of reading comp at least one day, so you don't feel like you're getting rusty, and you still get some variety too.
Right. I try to do the games as much as possible. I'm actually enjoying the games out of more than anything. If I ever get an LSAT, nothing but games, I probably would get the 180 as I dream of one day. But you know, I can only dream. But that's not a reality. But the logical reasoning is like my main weakness. The reading comprehension, I'm not bad, I guess, because I was an undergrad. As an undergrad, I was an English major, so that's what we were really focusing, how to pick up on the context clues. What is it really saying? The main point, all that stuff. So that's not really my issue. It's more the logical reasoning, and it's kicking my behind. And I pretty much did any and everything as possibly I could, and it feels like I'm not getting nowhere, but I'm moving so slow. I'm like, by the time I get it, LSAT will not, I don't want to do it anymore, because that's how much I feel like it's going to, I don't know. I don't know how to really put it into words. All I know, I feel like I'm dragging so much in that area.
Well, I think it sounds like you need a study plan of some sort. So I'll send you links to a couple of different options to explore those more, so that you know what to work on. And you can also keep it manageable, because you've got to go forward with a plan of attack. You've got about 2 months, maybe more. And if you've got more free time than usual at home, make the most of it. Make the most of it. I know you want 150 plus, but you also have dreams of something much bigger. The sky's the limit, and you've got the time to make it happen. So just use the plan of attack, put in the work. You can make logical reasoning your focus, still cycle in the other areas, like I said, but make sure you keep forging ahead.
Now, my next question, is it possible to really get into law school with a weak GPA from undergrad?
Yeah, depending on your LSAT. The biggest factors are your LSAT and GPA. And so if you've got a weak GPA for undergrad, the biggest thing you could do right now is get a high LSAT to offset it.
So that's the main reason why why the school is offering us this master's program, because everybody that I know had a weak GPA for undergrad, but a lot of us have been improving our GPA for our master's. So, but I know that at the end of the day, they still are going to look at the undergrad GPA. And sometimes I wonder if this is really worth it. But I like doing the master's program. I'm finding myself learning a lot within the program. But, I just want to know, like, because I don't want to just apply to that school. I have other schools on my list that I don't know if they're going to look at the master's GPA and be like, well, she messed up in her undergrad, but, she really, because right now my GPA for my master's program is above 3.0. So I was hoping and wondering if they were going to look at that as well.
Yeah, the master's GPA, it'll certainly give them some context, and it's obviously nicer if your master's GPA is as high as possible. But when it comes down to the cold, hard calculations, the undergrad GPA is what gets input, and the master's will not impact that from a numerical, statistical perspective. And so, again, the biggest thing you could do to improve your odds right now is get the highest LSAT possible to offset that and show that you've got at least that number for them to look at too.
Okay.
Well, we're not up to today, but I'm really glad we connected, Catherine. Before we sign off, what would you say is the biggest insight you got from our call today?
I feel like just talking to you and you actually breaking it down of how the school sees the application from a student, even if it's a poor GPA, and, trying to really get an insight of how to master the logical reasoning section of the LSAT. It really, put things in perspective, and I hope that you do send over some material or some type of schedule for me to look at and see if I can determine which one best fits my situation, because this is important to me, and I really do want to be the best lawyer as possibly I can be. But the only way I can actually be a lawyer is if a school accepts me. And I know I can't put all of my eggs in one basket. And a lot of people told me, oh, you're going to be fine with just that one school. I'm like, no, it'll be my luck that school will find something and want to deny me, and then I'm back to square one, and then I got to start the whole process over for next year.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm glad I was able to help. Please keep in touch and let me know if you need anything as you move forward.
I will. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Have a good one. Bye.
You too.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.